Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the White Pew podcast. My name is Gabrielle Della Puente.
I'm Serena Mohammed.
And we're making this episode because we're not publishing a Sunday text today. And we haven't published Sunday texts most of the summer. And we just wanted to tell everyone where the fuck we've been. And also why we aren't here now. So we thought it was just a little tiny podcast episode out of fear, shame, guilt, obligation to our Patreon subscribers and
also minor embarrassment, which feels different to shame. Like, there's a part of not publishing a text that feels embarrassing.
Yeah, because if you're not aware, we have been writing on a website that we run together called The White Pew since 2015, and we've been publishing text basically every week to explain where we've been, which I think is quite a good excuse. But that shame that I was mentioning at the beginning is like, I have internalized this completely false information where, so we've got about 700 Patreon supporters and a few people have donated one-off bits on PayPal and Ko-fi or however the fuck you pronounce that thing. But in my head, each one of those people gives us the full amount. So if we don't do anything, I feel like I need to explain to that one person why we've let them down so deeply, rather than why we've let quite a big number of people down a little bit each or something. Like, it's not proportional the way I feel when I don't do what I think we're supposed to be doing online.
So do you in your mind, is it like, instead of loads of people giving a little bit, you're like, it's one person giving all of it,
and I feel
and you
so
feel like you've
bad.
got to sit them down?
Exactly. I don't know why I think that, but that's where we are. So
who's the person? Describe the person.
It's like
what do they look like in your mind?
It's like a AI generated face of just like all the people that have donated over the years, and that, it haunts me. So we've been posting for 8 years, and there have been a few, like 4 or 5 times within that 8 years when someone has said to me, I think I've read everything you've ever posted. One of them was when we were in, I want to say, Sweden, and we went for a drink with someone, and they said, oh, I actually download every text you publish as a PDF in case the website ever goes down. Someone just DM'd us one time to say it. Someone who is like one of the first people who ever read us, I think, has said it to me as well. So in my head, it's that person, the person who is like a fucking loyal Sunday text, 11 a.m. They know that there's going to be something new, and they don't even have to check the Instagram or the Twitter to like get that notification, because they just go straight to the source. They just have the White Pew bookmarked and they check it on a Sunday, like in an internal clock way. That's who I'm scared that we're letting down. But we need to explain where we've been, because we're being teasers and
Okay.
Where have we been?
Direct address to the pew person. We've been busy writing a book.
It's a good excuse.
Am I allowed to say that? It still feels illegal.
Why else would we have recorded the podcast? We have to say we've been writing a book.
Gabrielle, every time I say it aloud, I tell people, and I'm like, I shouldn't tell you this, it's a secret. Like, it's like I have to like give it like an air of naughtiness. But because we're sat down actually saying it aloud in like an official setting, like, you're wearing the Game Pube t-shirt right now. That's an official setting. This is an official Pube cast.
Roll it back. Let's scene set. So,
okay.
As I said, we've been writing for years and years and years and years. Over that time, we have accumulated quite the international audience of people. And sporadically, over the past 8 years, we've had messages from agents who have said, hello, you ever thought about writing a book? And we've entertained it between ourselves. We've been like, I feel like it's something we could do and we should do to try and make money, but at the same time, I don't want to, and I don't feel ready, and I actually don't think I've got anything to say that hasn't already been said before, and I don't want to embarrass myself in public. Like, there was definitely, for me, an element of, I actually think I'm too young to write a book. My brain wasn't developed. It's not developed until you're like 25. So maybe up until the age of 25, I felt like, thank you for getting in touch. Thank you for taking us to Disham for a meal and giving us some free books. Thank you for taking us to Joe and the Juice so that we could have this conversation and say, like, what the fuck's an agent? But ultimately, it just never felt like the right time. So we didn't write a book, even though people kept asking us to.
Because our frontal lobes weren't developed. It was just, it's as simple as that.
And that's
too much brain plasticity.
I am so glad we said no.
But we are writers fundamentally, and writers write books, no? So maybe resisting it was futile, and maybe the universe intervened because we met an agent on a train. And we've met agents before, but for some reason being trapped on the train with this, for scene setting. The train
trapped isn't the right word.
It makes it sound like she was like
hunting us down.
It was the beginning of 2020, like before.
It was March 2020.
It was March 2020.
It was March 2020. It was the beginning of March. Me and Zarina were going to a conference in Dortmund.
Shit.
But the whole thing about this conference was like they didn't want anyone to fly in. So they said, we'll pay for train tickets to everyone. And me and Zarina were like, oh my God, that sounds so fun. We love trains. It'd be so fun to go on a train all across Europe. On the train to Dortmund, because with it being the beginning of March 2020 and, you know, coronavirus. It wasn't even COVID then, it was coronavirus. There was a woman sat next to us and she was coughing so much and she had to, like, we were giving each other side eyes. It was really bad. And she was like, oh no, don't worry girls, I've got lung issues, I've always had them, it's genetic or something. And we felt really bad about ourselves, so we were just like, okay, sorry. But we were chatting on the train for so long, and obviously in English, that the person on the table next to us were like, are you by any chance going to this conference in Dortmund? And we were like, oh my God, yes we are. And she said, what do you do? And we said, what do you do? And we all got to know each other. And she turned out it was Millie Riley, who is an agent. Over the course of the conference, we hung out a few times. And then on the way back, she sort of said to us, well, if you're ever thinking about writing a book, like, I don't want to push you into it, but if it's ever something that, like, you know, comes up for you, feels right, here's my details. And we were like, okay. Obviously, then the world closes down. We spend 2020 writing more than we've ever written. Our audience absolutely fucking spiked. Our Patreon spiked as well. It was a really strange time for everyone, but for us professionally, it was like, yeah, what? Like, I think our writing improved because we were able to focus on it more. And towards the end of that year, we got in touch with Millie to say, we've had an idea for a book. And we're not going to talk too much in detail about what that book is here, because we can't legally. I don't know. We just can't talk about it. We can say it's about art. It's a book about art. And it's about artists, and it's about, like, what it takes to kind of keep art in your life when it's so difficult to do that, given the world that we live in. ... Anyway, we had an idea for a book. And we had a meeting with Millie, and she was like, okay, well, this is what we need to do then. I'll be your agent. And we were like, cool, that's great, because obviously divine intervention brought us together on that train. And then she said, I need you to write a book proposal. So a book proposal, as she explained it to us, for non-fiction books in particular, is usually 2 or 3 chapters, sample chapters of the book, with a chapter outline about what the rest of the book is going to be like, including maybe an introduction to, like, who you are and why you're the best person to write this book. And then the book proposal would end with, like, what else is in the market that is kind of similar to the thing that you want to write. And the reason for that is so that when we move to the next stage and the agent is showing the proposal to the publishers, they can hopefully see that it's, like, a marketable thing and that they'll make money on it, because essentially, like, this is all weirdly about money in a way that we're not really that used to. Like, it kind of has to have some commercial viability in order for the publishers to invest in it. Sort of fair enough, fine.
Because I think, at least on, like, the book purchaser's end, you think, oh, is this interesting? Like, as a thing for me to buy. Is this something I want to spend my Sundays reading, you know?
Yeah.
But, Like you consider it on its own terms as like a finished product. But if you're making the book, you've got to think about it as a product, as a thing. You've got to zoom out and be like, this is the product. What's going to make this person buy it? What's going to make you believe that that person who's written that book is worth listening to?
Yes, because if
You're not
I
just judging
pay,
the cover.
if I pay the writer to create it and then I pay for it all to be printed, then I need to make my money back on this fucking book. Again, sort of fair enough. The only issue is we had that meeting in December 2020, and in January 2021 I got sick with COVID, and then it became long COVID, and basically I forgot we'd even had the meeting. My brain was like on the moon. And I didn't have the energy, and I was in too much pain and all the rest of it. We've gone over this. I'm sick now. I'm still sick. It's been almost 3 years. Isn't that crazy? We didn't actually write the proposal until
2022, I think.
Until a year and a half after. That's crazy, isn't it?
I mean, I think as well, like, you were sick in 2021 and it took us ages to like recalibrate, figure out how we could go about still doing things with you being sick, like whether you know, like figuring out what that meant for collaboration.
Yeah.
But we wrote in so many different directions to figure out what that tone of the book would be, because even though we knew what the idea was, it was like broad strokes. We didn't know what it would actually sound like and what it should, on a word by word sentence level, what that should feel like.
And it was a year and a half difference. And I just want to stress, like, our agent Millie was not harassing us to do anything. She was very supportive, and she was just like, I'm not gonna drop you just because you can't do it right now. Like, this will happen when it happens. And that was really good, because I think there's a sense in creative industry shit that like an opportunity is only there for like a very brief moment. You have to grab onto it, otherwise like you're never gonna get it again. So it's nice when people within that industry stop that like temporariness from like becoming an imposition on people. But yeah, as Zarina said, like, we really took a while when it did come to writing the sample chapters for the book proposal to figure out like what our tone was going to be. Because yes, like up until that point we had about 7 years of writing practice in the bag, but a lot of that practice has been done individually. Like, we take turns writing texts on the White Pube, and sometimes those are short reviews, sometimes they were like longer essays. This book is actually our collaborative voice together, like the ultimate White Pube, and it's actually like a meld of fiction and non-fiction. So we had to figure out what the fuck that meant, like in practice and aesthetically.
Because it was like a whole new language. Like, before 2022, like before we wrote the book, you sounded like you, I sounded like me. And it's like those two voices, but we had to come together and figure out not just like how to write collaboratively, but like how to write collaboratively in a completely new register that we'd never spoken in or written in before.
You know, even logistically, it's not like we're sat typing while we're holding hands. Like, what do? Do we like, I write, then pass the text to you, and then you edit it, and what are we going to do? Hello, it's Gab from the editing booth. I just wanted to pop in very quickly because we actually only explain what happened in the non-fiction side of things when it comes to publishing books, and I know that a lot of our readers might not know anything about this process, and I think the fiction side is like kind of fascinating from a class analysis standpoint. Just very quickly, if you're doing fiction, none of this book proposal stuff is like relevant. What happens is that you're expected to just write the whole book on your own time, and then with the help of an agent you would try and shop that to different publishers. I suppose it's because like non-fiction is less of a risk, like it's easier to set out exactly what's going to happen across the book, and therefore it's not that much of a surprise to the publishers in a way that fiction definitely can be, because it's speculative and it's bizarre. But it means that like fiction writers just have to do it on their own time, like I said, and what that means is, like, unless you've got the money to just be at home and get this book out your system, then fiction writers from working class backgrounds are just going to work, trying to squeeze it in, sometimes at work or just doing it of an evening and a weekend, which means it's like a much slower process and probably a much more difficult process because not everyone's got the mental organizational capacity to like hold real life thoughts and creative thoughts in their head at the same time, if that makes any sense. It also kind of clarifies to me why there are so many middle class writers or voices being published who I don't feel like I can necessarily relate to. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I agree with what you're saying, maybe I enjoy how you're saying it, but like sometimes there's just this disconnect, and I suppose like class is almost always the answer. And I suppose I also bring this up because I think it's important to state explicitly that going the non-fiction route is the only way we could have afforded to write a book and to produce a book. Like, how else would we have done it? I don't know. We wouldn't have been able to buy ourselves the time, which is like pure gold in terms of creativity. Okay, back to the episode. So, challenge done, figured it out. We gave the proposal to Millie. She was like really enthusiastic about it, which was exciting. And then she was like, okay, you leave it with me. I'm going to take it to publishers and I'm going to call up everyone I know and like, let's fucking go. We were like, oh my God, what's happening? And I remember it was like just going into the summer. And apparently in publishing world, like everyone is really hardline about taking the summer off. So there's a bit of urgency, like, okay, let's get it in before everyone goes on holiday. So we were like, oh my God, what if everyone's already gone?
But, right, it's worth us saying that, like, Millie's not just like a general agent, she's a literary agent. So, and she's been doing her job for years. Her job basically involves being an author's representative to the publishers. And it's quite nice to have someone, if you're like a writer, you're used to freelancing, you're used to kind of being like a lone ranger, a cowboy, a gunslinger. In the wild, wild west of self-employment, it's quite nice to have someone there to represent your interests, who's on your team, who's there to like fight for you and be your representative in negotiations and stuff like that. So her job is to go to publishers. She's got relationships with publishers and like the editors that work at these publishing houses. They ask her what her authors are up to.
What she explained to us was that these publishing houses will have, you know, I don't know if it's like a weekly meeting or a fortnightly meeting or whatever it is, and all the editors will sit around the table, and if that editor has been approached by someone like Millie with a book proposal and they want it, they have these regular meetings where they say, I've got a book, here's this book on the table, here's this book proposal, I think we should buy it. Like, as a company, I think this is worth the investment, here's why. And essentially, like, your agent has to make the publisher want to fight for it, like, and the book proposal has to like make them want to fight for it. It has to be like so good that they're like, oh, we have to. And I suppose that's very similar to like a lot of arts funding processes as well. But that scared me as much as it excited me, because our book is so weird. Like, as I said, it's a mix of fiction and non-fiction, to the point where we don't even know where it's going to be in the shop when it finally comes out. Like, will it be on the fiction section or the non-fiction? We don't know. How do we explain that, and how do we sell that to like people we've not met?
We didn't know when we were shopping it around. Like, it was even more uncertain and like weird and bizarre when we sent it out as a proposal. But like when it was a proposal, it was like theoretical, and it was like the editor would have to kind of see potential in it because it was abstract. It didn't exist yet. Like, it was even more of a gamble.
And that's completely compounded by the fact that, like, who the fuck are the White Pube? Like, what the fuck is the White Pube? Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have at least, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of knowledge of who we are and what we do. But one, we've got a weird name that not many people outside of art will ever understand because it's a reference to the white cube, blah, blah, blah. But, like, it says the word pube in the title, and that's not very professional, blah, 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 who cares? And how marketable or commercial is a book with the word pube on the front of it? Like, these are actual issues that for us have been funny jokes up until now, but, like, could hinder our careers.
It's also not a human name. Like, it's not like so-and-so, so-and-so. We favour people, like faces and, like, human stories and names. It's like a collective name. It's like, yeah. unpacking it like this, I'm like, wow, how do we even have jobs?
How do we even have jobs? The good thing is that process was really fast. Maybe like 3 weeks long, of, okay, her sending out the proposals and then waiting to hear back about the results of those internal meetings, essentially. And when it came down to it, we had 4 offers.
Yeah, it was 4.
And then that was when things got really like X Factor-ish. So we had to meet up in London where we were going to meet these publishers face to face. And the way our literary agent explained it to us is like, it's not even about selling ourselves in that meeting because the book proposal's done the work. It's about us trying to find which publisher we think we would work best with and which publisher we think would result in the best book. What's their editorial vision for the book? You know, asking them there and then, okay, you've read the book proposal. Like, how would you make that better? And that is when things kind of clicked for me. Like, what is an editor? Because I think it's just a critic. I think critics and editors are like almost exactly the same people.
Really,
and it was nice
jobs.
to be sat with, you know, us two as critics opposite another critic and have critical conversations about this like proposal for something that hasn't materialized yet, because we were hearing like other people's visions for how that potential could be, you know, shifted or redirected, or maybe it could be refined in certain ways to make certain different types of books. And like everyone had very different end results. Like all 4 publishers were talking about the book completely differently.
And they had different questions for us that they wanted to like, because we sent them the same proposal. They all came back to us with different questions about like, well, have you thought about this? Have you figured that bit out? Because it wasn't like they received the proposal and they were like, yeah, we want that version of the book. They saw it as like a TBC.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. And
well.
I really appreciated that, because like we don't often get to be in that position because we are critiquing other people's works. Why is there a little thumb?
Why is that? The
Zoom likes what I said. Oh my god. I don't know if that's going to record or if you're listening to the podcast. As I was speaking then, a little thumb came up on the Zoom screen. We're not alone. Anyway,
That's different to the raised thumb reaction.
What all I was trying to say before aliens and the FBI during the call is that like we are so used to being in a position of critiquing other people's works, and we don't often get people critiquing our writing. Like sometimes people are like, ugh, like you're a fucking idiot, or I think what you said is wrong, but people don't often talk about our writing on like a word to word level. It made me really excited to work with an editor because someone was finally going to do that for us. And I thought, no matter what happens, like the effect of criticism coming back to us is going to be so positive. Like our writing is going to develop. Like, so we need to pick a writer, so we need to pick an editor who is going to make us like our best selves, however fucking cheesy that is. I've been feeling this sense lately that, you know, I started my BA. We started our BA 2013 and we left in 2016. So it's nearly 10 years since we did a BA, but it's actually 10 years already since we started one. And I'm like, do I want to go back to university? Like, if I went back to university, what would I do? Is now the worst time ever to go because of like how badly university staff are getting treated, and I can't just write forever without ever having that writing develop. Like I'm sure it's going to develop a bit because I'm just doing it a lot, but I would love like mentorship or that like specific detail on the words that I choose to put and the order I choose to put them in the same way that a university tutor in an art school might talk about the actual brushstrokes on a picture. And like in a sense, maybe I don't need to go to university anymore because we've now had that experience with an editor over the past 12 months.
That is really interesting. That is really interesting because I agree and disagree. I think I feel less and less like I will ever want to do an MA. I never want to do an MA. I want to do an MA even less now than I did like 5 years ago.
Really?
I feel like I've gone the other direction. I just want to be left alone. I don't want to think about how anyone might read it. Over the past year, we've been speaking to artists in specific circumstances that may or may not become apparent. But I think as I speak to more and more artists, I feel like more and more justified and affirmed in the fact that, like, really, I just want to get on with things, and I don't want to think about the audience and how, like, a reader might end up consuming that, like, consuming and reading the text. That's nice. Such a privilege. What an honour to have your work looked at in that way. But, like, it's also none of my business how it's, like, read through, received, you know? I think I just want to be, like, left to my own devices. I want to go to a shed and, like, chisel away at, like, an enormous sculpture that's, like, actually a text, and, like, just get on with things and figure things out for myself, because I just kind of want hands off to, like, see what happens. But to return to that, I was going to say, I think the reason it feels like an editor is, like, a window open is because the reader is only ever really able to provide comment, not critique, and not really feedback. I think maybe throughout history, an editor has been like a stronger presence, you know, like if you're a journalist, you have a relationship. In the past, you'd have a relationship with an editor, and they'd go through, you'd be mates, and you'd, like, go down Fleet Street to, like, a pub and, like, knock back a couple of whiskies and shoot up a cigar, and, like, you'd go through the manuscript, and because, you know, you'd, like, light a cigar with, like, those enormous flamethrowers. Like, you'd set fire to the enormous burning bushel of the cigar. You'd go through the manuscript to get together, and it would be a collaborative process. The editor was like a more empowered force through the history of publishing. And now, at least for a critic or for a journalist, like a writer that's writing short form, magazine public print is dying. Magazine structures are, like, slowly becoming impoverished. Editors are having to do more work, like editorially commissioning. They have less time to spend going through an actual article, like, and giving direct, detailed feedback for a writer. And I think often, because that is, like, a structure that's being impoverished by funding cuts and, like, lack of actual capital, like, editors through those magazine structures, they're being paid less and less. They're not actually as good. A lot of people, like, that freelance don't have, like, a prolonged relationship with an editor where they're pitching over and over again to the same people.
True.
And, like, getting, like, that rapport, that relationship, that back and forth where you know each other and you have, like, a sense of shared sensibility around what you want to put out. We are independent as well. Like, we edit each other, so we have got that long-term rapport and relationship. But also, it's like, I don't know, I feel like we're also enablers for each other. Like, we're not able to provide an objective dramaturgical analysis point of view because we're, like, too within the pocket of each other to be able to step out and be like, you need to think about this, you need to think about that. We can do it sometimes, but not all the time. And so it's just, like, it's a bit of, like, I don't know, I feel like the 21st century, the advent of the internet has really changed the game for writers. And I say this with a kind of wink and a nudge because we're 29. What do we know about what publishing was like in the 70s? It just feels like a slightly different game to the game that it sounds like it was, however long ago in the past. But publishing a book is print. It's a formalised structure that hasn't been impoverished in the same way that, like, writing for a magazine has with the move to online. Books haven't moved online. That editorial workforce is still, like...
And I think essentially when it came to picking an editor and a publisher through those 4 meetings, we went with the people who had the most critique for us, and, like, the critique that was most interesting, and, like, oh wait, we haven't thought about that. And I think we can talk about this because I think it's an interesting point and explanation as to why we chose these people, and we can't say who they are, but it's a really good publisher. We'll reveal all of that soon. essentially, like, when we'd written the book proposal, we'd began with this big introduction about who the White Pube is and what we do and what we care about and, you know, how close we are to our readers and all that shit, and, you know, our interest in, like, challenging institutional ways of operating. And then we'd included those sample chapters that we were describing earlier, where we were trying to figure out how to, like, meld our voice and find some footing within a semi-fictional tone. And when we sat in this meeting with this particular publisher who we ended up going with, she said to us, like, her favourite part of our book proposal wasn't the sample chapters, but it was the way we'd written the introduction. And as soon as she said it, and she said, you know, I'd like you to write the book in that voice, in your own voice, rather than trying to, like, put on a front and, like, a pretense. Like, she was basically saying, I don't want you to go, I'm writing a book. She was like, I just want you to speak. And that felt so affirming and so right. It was like, okay, this is actually a good fit. This suits us, because you're basically telling us to be ourselves, which is a lot easier than telling us to write a book.
But it's also like we are within the pocket of each other, like that closed logic, right? We're like collaboration, but two different people, but like collaborating. We can't really see outside of what we're making between us too well, you know? Like, it's kind of like we can't be that feedback loop for each other as well as we perhaps can for other people. Like, we can't be our own critics. This editor was able to, like, look outside of us and see what needed to happen, or like what was missing, like that zoom out. And as soon as she said it, we were like, you're fucking right. You're absolutely bang on.
And the even better thing is that she didn't know who we were. And I don't mean that in, like, a fucking cocky way, like as if everyone knows who we are, but, like, some of the other publishers were like, oh yeah, I've been reading The White Pube for years. And that obviously would have informed their tastes and their, like, ability to critique us as well. So she didn't know who we were, but her assistant editor, when the proposal came through to this publishing house and this imprint, the assistant editor had actually been in a lecture we'd done at an art school. So the assistant editor was able to flag it in a way that was like, oh, I do know who these are, but having that mix of critique it's perfect for us. Like,
it's been the perfect mix.
It's been the
perfect mix. You say not in a cocky way, Gabrielle. I'm going to be cocky with it, because until I went on a date with my fella, I'd not been on a date since 2018 where the first date where the other person hadn't known who I was.
That's so fucking creepy.
Isn't it? I don't know what that says about my taste, because it's not like every single man my age knows who we are. But that speaks more to my choice.
So we'll try and speed up a bit, because Serena's got to do some teaching at a university after this call. So, oh my God, I've just remembered the plot twist. Okay. Go back, rewind. The conversation was just going so well that without even fucking consulting Serena, I just went, I've had an idea for a second book. And I just started talking about this other book idea I was sort of having on the spot. And in the end, we found out that this is something that publishers like. I was like, huh? Our agent said,
it's like a bog off deal, right? Like, it's like buy one, get one free, kind of.
But our agent was like, okay, I think you need to change the book proposal, like, right now to say 2 books. I think you are actually proposing 2 different books. So just add that on at the end, this second book proposal, even though you haven't written any of the, like, sample chapters. Just fucking add it on as a little PS.
Yeah.
PS, I've had another idea for a book. Because in publishing, they like to see their big investment as, like, a long-term project with someone. You know, if they're putting all this time and money into a writer, it'd be good to, like, carry on developing that writer's work and to carry on, like, also reaping the benefits of that development. Which I have seen also in arts funding. Like, if you've had 1 or 2 arts council applications accepted, you're more likely to just carry on getting them forever, because the arts council wanna like, keep on with you rather than invest in lots of people a singular time, which is a little bit shady, but I mean, that's the reality of it, isn't it?
No, but it kind of, less for the Arts Council. I think there should be enough money to go around for everyone. But with a publisher, it makes sense because your debut publishing moment, people don't know who you are. They might never have heard of you. They're just walking into Waterstones and taking a chance, taking a gamble. But the second time round, if the first time round you did a good job, you've got a fan base. You've got
True.
an audience ready and waiting. That second book might be a hit. It's more likely to be a hit. It might be like third album weirdness. I don't know. But like, I think breaking the seal on that first book probably feels like more of a risk. So when you're sending the proposal out to them, they come back to you with like an enthusiastic yes. Like, oh my God, yeah, loving the vibes. Here's our offer. And it's a smaller number, but you meet them, you have a chat, you get to know each other's vibe, and then our agent Millie, went back to all 4 of the people that put in an offer to us and was kind of like, how high can you go? Go on, show me the checkbook, show me, what have you got in there, what have you got in the bank, like what's going on? And kind of up the ante a bit, try to like, not play them off against each other, but you've got to kind of, put the fear of God in them. And they come back to you with their real offer, which we can't say, but we may say.
We will say, we'll do another episode about the like financials. And also just to be a little sneak on us, we have been publishing our accounts for the past fucking 7 years or whatever it's been. So if you actually just want to go on the White Pube and look at our accounts and have a look at some of the numbers, you can figure out not only how much we've got, but also probably who the money came from. Sneaky. Sneaky. If you're a detective,
No.
you can get all these answers. You can.
You can't find out where it's come from because I do the accounts. It's Millie who pays it to us.
It just comes from the agency. Oh, okay, true.
So
that's
maybe
disappointing.
It's,
I'm sorry.
Worth us explaining that structure as well. So like we don't actually receive the money from the publisher. We receive money from Millie, who takes a percentage cut for the work that she does, which is hard work.
She has to go through like the other bit that we didn't mention is going through all the contracts that specify like what there's a clause in the contract that has to specify what would happen if one of us died, like, and what would happen to the book and the money and all the rest of it, and like it goes into detail. If one of us dies, let's just go on a fucking tangent really quickly. If one of us dies and say there's like notes, the publisher has to decide whether there are enough notes to go off to finish the book. If we both die, those notes would be given to someone who writes like us, and they would try to finish the book for us. And this has happened apparently quite a few times, and there are notable points in book history. But like, who would that be? I don't know.
Because writers die all the time.
David Foster Wallace would finish the book. I was
listening to a podcast. I hate that chat. By the White Cube and Chat GPT.
Nope.
But like I was listening to a podcast about this. David Foster Wallace's last book that he ever published was like half written by the time he died, and he had an editor that he worked with loads, who was able to like go through his notes and his drafts and figure out a version of it that felt like him. But they didn't always agree. Yeah, but they didn't always agree.
That's so rough, isn't it? But you have to have those things in the contract.
King.
Anyway, that happened. I remember I got the email through with the final offer, and I was like, oh my God. And again, we'll talk about money in the future. It wasn't enough for us to quit our jobs and just write a book. Like, we have had to work full-time all year. This essentially equates to like a minimum wage part-time job that we've both had for the past year to write the book.
The publishers pay an advance for non-fiction. So they pay you a lump sum up front. It is a figure that comes out of the set. Like, it's not like they pay you that money for you to keep. It's kind of like a loan, an advance, and they give you that money that you take away to write the book, but you have to kind of earn it off through sales, and only once that money has been earned back do you start earning royalties. And it's kind of like, that's the whole complicated process. But this advance was paid to us based on 2 books, right? So it's a 2-book deal, so it's split in 2 already. Like, the advance that we get now for this 1 book is like half already, split between 2 people, so that's a quarter. So like I'm going to take those two away. 2 people, that's a quarter each. And then also, part of that first one book sum between 2 people is paid on signing, on delivery of the manuscript, and then on publishing a hardback and publishing the paperback copy. So it's split into all these different, like the big sum is split into loads of different sums. So we've actually only got a teeny tiny amount of it up front to actually write the book in the first place, and that money is running out. So
great stress.
We are stressed about money, and maybe in a couple years we will listen back to this podcast and how we will laugh on our bed of stacks of cash.
I don't think
we will look back at this time and we will.
It's really hard, like
if we will, but maybe we will. I don't know.
I'm glad you brought money back up, because I think like if I was listening to like any sort of content creator on the internet who has like, you know, tens of thousands of followers, like if I was listening to them talk about getting an advance, I'd be like, oh my god, that person's a millionaire, oh my god, they're gonna buy a Lamborghini. But like for us, it really has not been that much money, and in a sense, like maybe the advance not being that high is a good thing, because we'll earn the money back soon enough that we'll start to get paid royalties, but that depends on how well the book sells, so we'll see. That fear that we've had in us, like, oh shit, we actually like really need to write the best thing we've ever written, because this is going to go out to a lot of people, but also we are critics, so people are going to be really harsh on our outcomes because we are critics, and we've said a lot of things about a lot of people over the years.
This is like a multiple point fear, because it's like
money.
It needs to be as good as possible because it's going out to people, loads of people. It's going to be in Waterstones. It's going to, like, we're critics. We chat so much smack that, like, we got to fucking have it, you know. We got to have it on us. Like, it's got to, we chat smack. We got to pull it out of the bag. But then it's also the money.
The other money thing is, like, if this book doesn't sell well, we'll never get a book deal again. Like, because if you think about it, like, when we were talking about publishers and investments, like the next, say we write this book and we write the second book, when it comes to that, oh, we really want to have a third book, like we've had an idea, that instance, and those publishers, say it's the same publishers, say it's a different one, they'll be like, okay, well, show us the figures for the first 2 books, and if those figures are bad, why would they ever give us the money? Like, it's a big fear, but also the artistic fear, like, okay, we've got this time to try and produce the best thing we've ever produced, so like let's give it our all, kind of thing. That has also been in us, and I actually, like, we've been writing for the past, maybe we started in September 2022, and it's just gone 12 months, 13 months. I'm really happy with what we've done. The editorial process has, like, you know, we had this kind of loose, fun idea in the book proposal, but the editors we've worked with have really helped us, like, sharpen our writing style, and they've helped us, like, reflect politically on what we're doing, and they've helped us think about how a big text is structured, because again, if you're aware of the White Pube stuff that we've been doing for like 8 years, the longest texts we've written tend to come out at like 6,000 words. This book is 103,000 words, so like we've really had to stretch our conception of what it means to write when we're so used to writing these like kind of little parcels that are wrapped up very neatly with a beginning and a middle and an end, and like that's just gone whooshum, and it's been really difficult to do.
But I think, having said that, I have learned already loads. I'm really proud of the work that we have produced this far, even if it's not finished, even if the work isn't done. We've like not only come really far and learnt loads, but like it's good. Like, I think it's good as it is. It could be better, but like it's not done. But like the work that we've done so far, yeah. So like it's still TBC. But the work that we've done so far, I'm really proud of. Like not only because it's like it's new. And it's like this whole, like, if we thought the proposal was like a new shared language between us, this is like
This
a
is
fucking...
something else. We've done it.
It's not just like a new register. It's like a new form for us entirely.
Yes. And
maybe even for criticism as discipline.
I hope so.
I
But
don't
like,
know, you'll have to chat to us next year.
to this, you know, amalgam singular reader who's listening, there's the one person who listens to the podcast, like, if you've read the texts that have been coming out over the past like few months, and the kind of fictional slant to some of them, like Pomodoro and Come Dine With Me and the Bingo Review and like even Maggot Man the other day, like, we are definitely seeing the effect of having written a book on our Sunday texts, and I love the change. I love it. It's really like made me so excited to write. I think there was a moment when I was starting to feel like our texts were a bit stagnant slightly, or I wasn't like as creatively fulfilled, and now that is like completely exploded and I'm like bang into it.
I think it goes back to that thing you were saying. You just need to open the doors, open the windows and get some like developmental juice in, or like you know, be left alone in your shed. Either way, whatever like presses you to develop the thing that you're like, we've hit a plateau and now we've broken that plateau and now we're stressed but satisfied.
That's it. I'm creatively fulfilled. I'm like slightly skinned, and I'm tired, and it's been really difficult to do through fatigue, and it's been difficult like in terms of the length of the whole thing, and it's been difficult to balance writing for the website that we run of our own accord, on top of writing a book, which is why we disappeared for a few months over the summer, because essentially we'd written the full book and then our editors were like, we love it, you've done all the writing, but what would you think about changing the order of it a little bit? And essentially that sounded like an easy fix at the time in the meeting. I was like, oh yeah, I totally agree, but that'll take us like a week, I'll just copy and paste some things around. But we realised that it was like rewriting an entire book in a different tense and changing the continuity and changing like the rhythm in order to like bump up the reader experience. So I disappeared for 2 months to change that, and it was like very much worth it. Yesterday we had a follow-up meeting with our editors after they read that version of the book, and there are a few more changes we need to make, and we've essentially got roughly the next 4 to 6 weeks to make those changes and like end up with a final file. And then we're aiming for an October 2024 publication date, because once books are done, it takes like 9 months to actually make them into like a printed book on a shelf. You have to go through like copy editing, line editing, marketing plans, printing, all that crap. It's called like it's the production side of things rather than the editorial side of things. So we've explained ourselves. That's where the fuck we've been. We're slightly going to dip out for like two or 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how long it takes energy wise, and like, you know, all that, to absorb the critique from the latest round of edits, and really fucking just wrap this up, because I think we're both itching to not only like have it done and feel settled, but we want to get back to writing Sunday texts every single week. I just like something just came out of my mouth like a fucking feeling. I was like,
I think it's worth saying, like, this is, I don't know about you, but this is the longest I've worked on anything ever.
Exactly.
My entire life.
It's hard.
Like one thing, one singular thing. Even at university, like,
way faster turnover.
even our dissertation, like, this is, because it's been longer than a year, Gabrielle. Like, this time last November, we'd been working on it for a good couple months. This is like a year and a half.
But from the book proposal, that's even more time, and from having the meeting, and like, this has gone on for a long time. But I think like it being in the oven for a long time is a good thing, and like yeah, it's exciting.
I think we're
so close to be able to talk about things, but like we almost can't, because we want to change the title of the book, so we need to decide on the new title before we can even say anything.
Yeah, there are still a couple things TBC. Like, I think as well, like, it's taken so long, it also feels weird to talk about it. I'm used to being like, oh, like, I can't say, oh.
Yeah.
It's been, like, such a secret
Like we're
we've
the type of
still
people
talked about, but
who like interview writers to help them publicize their books. Like it is so bizarre that at some point in the next year is going to flip and we're going to be like, oh god, we have to market the book now. We have to like, yeah, all of that is, but we can talk about that in future episodes of the podcast. Hello from the editing booth. I've just come in to sign off the episode because Zarina was in such a rush to leave and we just like didn't do it justice, I don't think. Thank you for listening, but more than that, thank you for being one of our readers. Like, thank you for helping us be a writer by virtue of reading us. I can't stress enough that these publishers would not have made an investment in our work if we couldn't justify such an investment with our readership numbers. So we could literally pull analytics from the website, from Instagram, Twitter, all the rest of it, and say, look, this is how many people are reading our shitty little Sunday reviews just of their own accord. And it's quite big. And over the years, that has kind of become like a 30,000 page views on the website every month. And it's like, as nervous as I am that no one's going to buy the book, no one's going to care, I have to remind myself, like, the people who listen to this podcast and the people who read thewhitepube.com are real, as are the Patreon supporters who aren't actually just one, like, conglomerate amalgamation face or whatever we were saying earlier in the episode. Like, yeah, thank you for being real. Thank you for supporting us. And none of this would have happened without you. So that reader support will be in the acknowledgements of the book. So I'll probably say it 500 more times, but thank you for letting us do what we want to do in life. And I appreciate it. If you want to also join the Patreon and you've not done it before, or do one-time donations on PayPal and Ko-fi, then just go to the support page on our website and I'll link the stuff in the show notes if I remember, but who knows. If you donate or support via any of those methods, then you get to join the White Pube Discord server, which is like my favourite place on the internet, and it's a really nice creative community where we organise crits and just have a nice old chat. If you're not able to support financially, because who the fuck is, then please consider just sharing some of the things that we've already done, whether that's a podcast episode or a text or a YouTube video, like organic posts of those things that maybe you've read and really appreciated or enjoyed or even hated, or you want to add critique to yourself. Like, that is the most interesting part of like sharing this stuff online for me. It's not the numbers, it's the interaction and the comments and the conversations, which is actually why I love the Discord so much, because we can like break it down with people there. So that's it. I'll say goodbye from Zarina, I'll say goodbye from me, and we will see you on the next episode of the podcast. But we don't know when that will be because we have to finish this book. Goodbye.
White Pube.